Greetings from Jerusalem. Hi to Eric Katz and all his friends. My name is Hana Bendcowsky. I'm a Jerusalemite and Israeli, Sabra. I'm working for the Rossing Center for Education and Dialogue. I'm responsible for the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations. I did my studies in comparative religions here in Hebrew University, and I got really interested in the local Christian communities in the Holy Land. When we come to visit the city, it seems there are many holy places. There are many Christian visitors visiting the city, but actually there are many Christians living in the city. There are the living stones of the city. They make this city alive. They make these churches, these holy places alive, even during these days when there are no tourists and the streets of the old city and the market are closed. So I'm working in an organization to try to promote dialogue between the local Christian communities, these living stones who live here in Jerusalem, and the general Jewish population. It's the first time in the history where the Jews are the majority and Christian the minority. We have a long experience of being minority around the world, and here, for the first time in the history, we're the majority, while the Christians, the Christian communities here, are minority among us. And that brings many challenges that we try to bridge in our work, in our educational work in the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations. What we're going to do today is that I'm going to introduce you the local Christian communities. Who are these Christians? What language do they speak? Which denomination do they belong to? And how do they express their faith, culture, and heritage here in Jerusalem? We enter the city through Jaffa Gate, the main gate of the city from the west. In the past, when pilgrims came to Jerusalem, they came from Jaffa Gate because this gate leads to the city Jaffa, the port, the entrance to the country, to the Holy Land. So the pilgrims landed at the seaport or now at the airport, and they come through Jaffa Road and enter the city through Jaffa Gate. This gate brings together people from different cultures, different religions, different nationality. They all enter the city through this gate, and that's what we're going to do right now. When we talk about the Christian communities in the Holy Land, we have to remember that we're talking about a very small community. In the whole country, we're talking about 175,000. Among them, about 80% are Arab Christians. And they are divided between different denominations, not just Protestants, but the majority of the local Christian belong to the traditional churches. The churches that have roots here in the Holy Land since the beginning of Christianity. We can generally divide them into few main groups. The Catholic Church, represented here by the Franciscan. You can see the cross over there. That's the cross that was used by the Crusaders 800 years ago, and today by the Franciscan, or the Latin Patriarchate, the Catholic representative here in the Holy Land. There are the Orthodox Christian that belong to the Byzantine Greek Orthodox Church. This church has a patriarch who sits here, not far from here in Jerusalem. He's one of 14 patriarchs or autocephalic communities, 14 churches that all together united in what we call the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, one of the 14, sits here in Jerusalem, and you can see the symbol of and the flag of the Patriarchate with two Greek letters in the middle, Tav and Phi, that stands for Philikes Taphos, the guardian of the tomb. The main duty of the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem is to guard the tomb of Jesus. He doesn't do that all by himself. We will see that the tomb is shared by other communities as well. But his flag, his symbol, indicate his main role as the protector of the tomb of Jesus, the tomb of Christ. And we have the Oriental churches here. The Oriental churches are small churches usually connected to a specific ethnic group, and they have their own heritage, history, tradition, culture, theology, and language. One of them is the Syriac Orthodox Church. They try to preserve the local language that was used here in the province of Syria 1500 years ago. What was the language? Yes, Aramaic. Here you can see the most important prayer in the Christian liturgy, the Lord's Prayer, the prayer that was taught by Jesus, probably in Hebrew or in Aramaic, written in Aramaic character. That's the same prayer that Jesus taught, probably in this language, Abuna Bishmaya, our Father in Heaven, written by one of the priests of the Syriac Orthodox Church here in Jerusalem. We have also the Coptic Church, the church that's based in Egypt, the Ethiopian Church, based in Ethiopia. The Armenian have their own quarter. They have their roots back in the 4th century when they adopted Christianity as the first state church in the Christian world. And of course, we have a different Protestant group represented here. We have to remember that the Protestants arrived here only lately. In the last 150 years, the first Protestant bishop to establish his seat here in Jerusalem was only in 1842. Modern history in Jerusalem terms. One of the things I always like to do is window shopping, to see what they sell in the souvenir shops. For example, here you can see that they sell candles, a bunch of candles, actually 33 candles, as the age of Jesus when he was on the cross. These are regular candles made of wax, but these are special candles. They're made of beeswax, and they're very symbolic. The bee considered to be a virgin animal. Only the queen of the beehive is the one who multiplies. All the rest of the bees just work. And just like Mary, who was virgin, the wick is the light, just as Jesus is the light of the world. And the wick is inside a candle, as Jesus was inside Mary. And you cannot break it like the virginity of Mary, because in the traditional churches, they believe that Mary was and stayed virgin after she gave birth to Jesus. So when the pilgrims light these candles, they think about Jesus, but they also think about Mary. If you want to take a piece of holiness from the Holy Land, you can get this kit. With a piece of Holy Land, you don't have to scratch the ground and get a piece of stone, but it's already made here. You have water from the Jordan River, where Jesus was baptized, soil from Jerusalem, from the Holy Land, oil from Bethlehem, where kings were anointed with oil, and incense from Jerusalem, 33 candles, a cross, and a Jerusalem stone. And when you get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you can see that the pilgrims charge this holy items with extra holiness when they put this kit on the holy places, on holy stones, and get more holiness to the souvenir that they bought to their friends and family back home. There are different kind of crosses. This is more of an Orthodox cross with these 3 leaves on the side, remind the pilgrim the Trinity. You can get crown of thorns, to be reminded of the pain and the suffering of Jesus when he was walking through the Via Dolorosa with a crown of thorn on his head, being mocked after he was mocked by the Roman soldiers. Here we get into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest place of the Christian world. And it's quite surprising. I mean, wouldn't you expect it to look much better, more impressive than just a small church kind of stuck between other buildings? Wouldn't you expect it to be properly renovated? But the reason why the church looks like that is not because the Christians don't care, it's actually because they care too much. The church we're going to visit now was built 1700 years ago by the Emperor Constantine. It was much bigger and much more impressive building than the building we're going to see today. But it was demolished 1,000 years ago by an extremist Muslim ruler from Egypt, Al-Hakim, who destroyed the church totally. And when the church was reconstructed in the year 1048, it was reconstructed to a smaller size than the original size, and that's the church we're going to see today. The church was renovated by the Crusaders in the 12th century, and actually most of the things we see today are dating back to the Crusaders' time. The arches, the columns, the windows, the bell tower, it all goes back to the 12th century. Only 850 years old. The Crusaders renovated the church, but they ruled here in Jerusalem only for 88 years, and after 88 years, they were defeated by the Muslims. And the Muslims didn't know what to do about this church. It was in a very bad condition, and there were many Christian denominations who wanted to have rights in the church and to use the church and pray inside the church. So in the 13th century, they announced the church as a holy place. They sealed all the doors of the church, like the door on the right here. They left only two doors, only one door open over here, and they gave the keys of the church to two Muslim families, the Joda family and the Nuseba family. Until these days, these two families have the keys of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. One family holds the key, another family opens and closes the church every day and every night. And then the Muslim ruler said, okay, we will allow the Christian to pray here, we will allow the Christian to be here, but we will give them the permission to do that. Now, who wants to pray here? Obviously, all the Christian denominations wanted to have rights in the church. The Copts from Egypt, the Syriac, the Armenian, the Catholic from Europe, represented by the Franciscan brothers, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem, they all wanted to pray in the church. So the Muslim divided the rights in the church between the different communities according to their relationship with the authorities, with the Muslims. You paid your taxes on time, you keep good relation with the authorities, you get more rights. You don't have money to pay your taxes, you lose your rights. Like the Ethiopians who could not pay their taxes in the 16th century, they lost the rights in the church. Rights for what? The rights to be inside the church, to have monks living inside the church, the rights to clean the church, and of course the right to pray. And until these days, the church is divided between 5 different communities who share the rights to pray, to sit, to clean inside the church. The Muslims were so confused about the divisions that they made between the different denominations inside the church that in the 19th century they asked a Protestant, Konrad Schick, to create a map with the different divisions inside the church. In 1885, the Ottomans, the Muslims, were so confused with the divisions of the rights in the church that they asked Konrad Schick, a Protestant German who came to Jerusalem for missionary work, to draw a map and color it according to the division inside the church. So originally the church was all the way up to here, to the main street. Today we're talking only about half of it, so that's the size of the church since the last 1,000 years. And the different color indicate who holds the property. So for example, you see that the main color, the dominant color here is blue, and that's the area that belonged to the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Then you have the purple areas, that's the area that belongs to the Franciscan. The orange is Coptic, and the yellow is Armenian. And then you have the area where we sit here, this courtyard, that's colored in black. That's indicated this area belongs to 3 different communities together. They share the rights here. That means that if they want to renovate anything here, they have to do it together. But the cleaning rights here is only for the Greek Orthodox. So if you want to clean the floor here, they will not allow you to do that, because only the Greek Orthodox can do that. And then the main part of the church, the holiest part of the church, the tomb of Jesus, is also shared by 3 communities together. So everything here has to be done according to the rights that were given by the Muslims back in the 18th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. Now, the fact that this area is blue doesn't mean that only Greek Orthodox can pray here. They hold the property, but every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the Franciscans have the right to do a procession around the church in areas that belong to the Greek Orthodox. And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Armenian were given the permission to do a similar procession in areas that belong to the other communities as well. And if you look at this column, you can see that half of the column is purple and half of the column is blue. That indicated half of the column belonged to the Franciscan and half of the column to the Greek Orthodox. Half of the column to the Greek Orthodox, half of the column to the Armenian. It's a very complicated situation. They have to share it together. And the shared area, the black area, the tomb of Jesus, the holiest place in the church, that's shared by 3 communities together, follow a very strict schedule. Who has the right to pray, where and when? Who has the right to clean, where and when? Who has the right to stand, where and when? And it works. It's amazing. I mean, you wouldn't expect that 5 different denominations sharing this place in such a strict situation and division, and it works. Do they like it? Not necessarily. It's not an ideal situation. It's not out of their feeling of ecumenism, that they want to share a place together. No, but I have no other choice because this division was made by Muslim. And just to make things a little bit more complicated, in 1852, the Muslim froze the situation. Status quo. You cannot change it. Whatever you have, that's it. You cannot change the rights in the church. And following this firman, this edict that the Muslim issued in 1852, other international agreements renew and accepted this status quo and confirmed that they would protect it. Therefore, the same situation, the same division in the church is still preserved until these days. And who is responsible to protect it? Well, the communities are doing quite a good work. They're working together, they're trying to negotiate when they have problems between themselves. But if something happened, or in case when the place is packed with tourists, for example around Easter time, who has the responsibility to secure the place? Just behind this wall, there's a little police station, Israeli police station, and Israeli policemen are responsible for the security in the church. And if you think about it, in the context of the history of Jewish-Christian relations, in the context of the situation in the Holy Land, in Israel, it's quite amazing that Israeli soldiers, Christian, Muslim, Druze, or Jewish, are responsible for the security in the holiest place to the Christian world. We enter the church, and the first thing we're going to see is Golgotha, Calvary, the place of the crucifixion. We're going to go up the stairs. They're quite steep, so be careful. The Franciscan who is responsible for the stairs, according to the status quo, cannot change and renovate it because of the status quo. So watch the step, and we're going to go upstairs to see the top of the hill of Golgotha, of the place of the crucifixion. The stone you see over here, this is part of the bedrock. It wasn't brought here. The church was built over the side. This stone was identified in the 4th century as the place of the crucifixion. The stone is not a mountain, it's not a hill, as many people imagine. It's only a small stone projecting from the ground, and it's believed to be the place where the cross of Jesus was placed, where he was crucified and he died on the cross. And for pilgrim, it's very important to come here and visit the place and see the stone and even touch the place of the crucifixion, to feel connected to the place of the crucifixion. Sometimes they stand in line for half an hour just to have the opportunity to touch the place of the crucifixion for 2 seconds. For them, touching the stone is having a contact with holiness. It's like we see someone we love. We don't just want to see him, but we want to touch him, we want to hug him. So for the pilgrims, it's very important to be able to touch the place of the crucifixion. Now this room is divided between 2 different communities. This part of the room belongs to the Greek Orthodox. You can see many oil lamps and icons decorating the walls. And then the other part of the room behind you belongs to the Catholics, to the Franciscan. Here you don't see so many oil lamps. You see many inscriptions in Latin. You see a sculpture, you see a statue of Mary, the suffering mother, and you see decoration made by the Franciscan. Although this room belongs to the Orthodox and the other room to the Franciscan, everyone is welcome to visit, to touch the stone, and to have an individual prayer, like the woman who sits here. But in order to have a proper service or procession or prayer, it has to be according to the status quo. So if you come here every day at 4:30 or in the summer at 5:30, because here they don't have summertime saving clock, so everything is an hour later during the summer, you will find a Franciscan walking here in their daily procession. They're allowed to do that at 4:30 every day, not at 3:30 and not at 6:30. Only when they have the right to do it in the status quo. While in their part of the room, they can have a service almost any time they want. So we came downstairs to see this stone covering the relics of the stone of unction, the stone of anointment. According to the gospel, after they took Jesus down from the cross, after he was already dead, they took the body and they put it on this stone and cleaned the body and purified the body in order to prepare it for the burial. Now, when the church is crowded during regular days, not during the corona time, you will see tens of people standing around the stone, and putting the souvenirs that they bought in the market on the stone to charge it with holiness, to pass this holiness of the stone to the item they bought in the market. So when they go back home to their friends and family and they would bring candles or icons or crosses or rosaries, they would say, well, this is a rosary chain, or this is an icon, or this is a cross that touched the stone, that touched the body of Christ. This area is shared by 3 communities together, but the oil lamps over this stone belong to the different communities. Those with the golden egg on the top, they belong to the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. They were lit during their celebration. The second one with the Armenian cross and the last one with the Armenian cross will be used by the Armenian. The third one, only one candle by the Catholic, with the letter L here indicate Latin. And then the sixth one with the black egg with flowers on the top, with the inscription in Coptic, it belongs to the Coptic Orthodox Church. Each community would light its candle during their service according to the status quo. If a pilgrim come here without a guide, they would have a guide on the wall with this huge icon, a huge mosaic that was made in 1990 by the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Mosaic in a very traditional Orthodox style. You can see the whole story of the church. It starts with the crucifixion. Jesus' body is taken down from the cross. You can see that below the rock there is a skull. The word Golgotha in Hebrew, or in Latin Calvary, means skull. And there is a tradition that there was a skull buried beneath the rock, and that was the skull of Adam. Adam brought the original sin to the world. Jesus, the second Adam, brought the salvation. Then they took him down from the cross, they purified the body, they cleaned the body, they took out the nails, and then they buried him in a cave. That was a traditional way Jews were buried back in the time of the Second Temple. But we're not going to see a cave today because the church was built on what used to be the cave, the burial cave of Joseph of Arimathea, who offered to bury Jesus in his own newly carved burial cave. What happened to the cave? Let's have a look. We are in the center of the church. This is the most important part of the church, the tomb of Jesus. As you can see, the room is circle, so it focuses your attention to the center. In the center used to be a big cave where Jesus was buried. In Jesus' time, the burial method was to put the person in a cave on a shelf. After 1 year, when the body was decomposed, they took the bones and put the bones in a little osher, in a little stone box. When Jesus was crucified and his body was laid in the tomb, the women came on Sunday to look for the body. But they found an empty tomb. And the shelf on which the body was laid down for 3 days became the center of the church. So the cave was demolished, the edicle was built over the shelf, and the circle room around it. So there's no doubt this is the most important part of the church. Inside this edicle, there are 2 rooms, 2 chapels. The first one with the burning candle is dedicated to the angel who appeared to the women on Sunday when they found the empty tomb. And he said, he's not here, he has risen. But what the pilgrims want to visit actually is the little chapel inside. This chapel is the place where you can see a piece of marble covering a relic of the bedrock where Jesus' body was laid down for 3 days. And in regular days, you have a line of 2 or even 3 hours of pilgrims waiting one after the other with a lot of patience to get 4 seconds to touch and leave. They wait all their life to have the opportunity to come here and be able to spend these 4 seconds in this place of the resurrection. Because for them to be here is not only to connect to what happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago and to the fact that he was crucified, died, and resurrected, but it's also a reminder of the hopes of every Christian to be resurrected, to get back to life when Jesus would return. At the end of the times, when the kingdom of heaven, in the kingdom of heaven, they would be resurrected with Jesus. So to be here is to be reminded of that, and therefore they're ready to wait all this time just to have these 4 seconds inside the tomb. Back of the tomb, we see the little Coptic chapel. The Coptic church, the Egyptian church based in Egypt, has a small chapel in the back of the tomb. They don't have many rites in the church, but most of the services they will do here in the back of the tomb. And usually this area is packed with pilgrims standing in line to get to the tomb. So they literally have to push the pilgrims in order to open the way to celebrate the regular service. That's part of the reality of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You have the pilgrims, you have the tourists, you have the monks who live here, you have the services that take place regardless of the presence of people, and you have to juggle between all these elements in the church. Follow me. This little chapel is dedicated to Nicodemus, who helped to bury Jesus and was also one of his followers who had a discussion with him in the beginning of the Gospel according to John. But the reason why I brought you here is to see this cave. This cave was examined by archaeologists who suggested that this cave was a burial cave from around the same time when Jesus was buried here. So it's a burial cave from the Second Temple period. It's indicated we're outside the city in a burial site, and it's a good example of how people were buried in Jesus' time, because in Jesus' tomb we cannot see much. It's all covered with the structure of the edicle, but here you can see an authentic burial cave from the same time. Locating a cave here indicating that this was a burial site was very helpful in the modern time when archaeologists questioned, especially Protestants questioned the location of this cave of Jesus. How could Jesus be buried inside the city? If he was Jewish, Jews do not bury their dead inside the city. We always bury people outside the city. How could that be a cave, a burial cave, if we're in the middle of the old city? The answer is this cave. In Jesus' time, this area was not inside the city. Here's another burial cave. So this area was a burial site, and that's the proof of that. The other reason why I brought you here is to see that this chapel was not renovated for at least 200 years. And the reason for that is the fact that there are two communities that insist that this chapel belongs to them. The Armenian, who have the right to light the oil lamps here, and the Syriac Christian, who have the right to pray here every Sunday. So every Sunday they come with a suitcase, they take out the chalice, the wine, the bread, the Bible, they decorate the altar with icon and flowers, they put curtains on the wall, they put carpets on the floor, they celebrate the liturgy here, and then they have to pack everything and leave until next Sunday. They cannot renovate it because each community insists this chapel belongs to them. And until it will be renovated, it seems that some pilgrims think that it brings some blessing if you write your name on the wall. So in the last couple of years, we see more and more names of visitors who wrote their names and their family, members of their family, probably with the hope that maybe their prayers would be heard better if the name is written in the chapel of Nicodemus, who helped to bury Jesus. This area belongs to the Catholic. This chapel is dedicated to Mary Magdalene, to whom Jesus appeared after he was resurrected on Sunday morning, and she was confused to think that he is the gardener. And the chapel inside is dedicated to his mother, to Mary, his mother. They both belong to the Franciscan brothers. You see here that it's decorated with more modern art. You have more sculpture, you have confessionals that you will not find with the other churches because the Eastern churches would not use confessional. And they have the organ. The short pipes are here, but the longer pipes are in the middle, in the gallery over there. Now just imagine a regular Sunday morning. 6 o'clock, the Copts start to pray in the back of the tomb. 6:30, the Franciscans start their service inside the tomb, and they have the right to play the organ. The Copts can hardly hear themselves. At 7 o'clock, the Greek Orthodox start to pray in the main hall. 8 o'clock every second Sunday, the Armenians with their 30 students from the seminary pray in the second floor. And 9 o'clock, the Syriacs start to pray in the back, all at the same time, not together. And the church is opened every morning at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the winter by the Muslims who have the keys, and pilgrims and tourists can enter the church and walk from one service to the other and hear the different liturgies in different languages with different sounds and different music. Most of them don't use musical instruments, only the Franciscans use the organ. They use their voices, the most beautiful and precious musical instrument that was created by God himself, the human voice. And you can just walk from one service to the other and hear all the services together. It's not very harmonic, but it's amazing. And the most amazing thing about it, that it works. For hundreds of years, they're praying one next to the other. It's really a house of prayers. This is the main praying hall of the Greek Orthodox, facing the tomb of Jesus. When you enter a Greek Orthodox church, don't look for the seats. They don't sit during the service. This is not a cafe. You're supposed to stand while you're praying and praising God. And the service is quite long. It takes about 3-4 hours. And the service is being done behind a screen. This wall is called iconostasis, a wall of icon. And the prayer would be done behind the screen. So people cannot really see the service. They can hear the service. When the priest bring the communion and share the communion with them, of course they will see him, but they will not see the rest of the service. You will not see the lay community, the parish, coming to pray here, but it's more for the pilgrims and the visitors who visit the church. They will join the services on Sundays here. We're on the roof of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Ethiopian monastery. You can see the little huts where the Ethiopian monks live here. About 20 monks live here. Ethiopia is the oldest country in sub-Saharan Africa to adopt Christianity. Already in the middle of the 4th century, the Ethiopian king adopted Christianity and many Ethiopians followed him. It's a very authentic old Christianity with many biblical elements that were preserved by the Ethiopian community, and the language of the prayer, Gez, is still preserved in the Ethiopian church. For many years, the Ethiopian church was dependent on their neighbors in Africa, the Egyptian church, the Coptic church, and only in 1959 they became a totally independent church with a patriarch located or seated in Addis Ababa. Here in Jerusalem, the Ethiopians have another connection to the city, not only through their faith, through their religious connection as Christian, but also because they believe that the dynasty of their emperors in Ethiopia in the last few hundred years were actually descendants of the family of King Solomon and Queen Sheba. According to the biblical story, Queen Sheba came to visit King Solomon and brought him many gifts and presents. But according to the Ethiopian version from the late Middle Ages, she was impressed by his wisdom, but he was impressed by her beauty, and he offered her to spend a night with him. She refused in the beginning, but he convinced her with a trick to spend a night with him, and when she left Jerusalem, she was pregnant, carrying his son in her womb. When the son was born, she named him Menelik, and Menelik came to visit his father when he was 18 years old. He spent a few months in Jerusalem, and then he went back to Ethiopia. On the way to Ethiopia, he took with him something to protect him on the way: the Ark of Covenant. And the Ethiopians believe that until these days, the Ark of Covenant is located in a building, now a church dedicated to Virgin Mary, in what used to be the capital of the Kingdom of Aksum, in the city Aksum. They believe that the Ark of Covenant, the covenant with God, Zion, was moved to Aksum. And their connection to Jerusalem is not only because they're Christian and they want to be in the place where Jesus suffered, crucified and resurrected, but also because they believe that all the royal dynasty came originally from Jerusalem. So the Ethiopians have this roof, they have two little chapels where they pray, and that's where the little community of Ethiopians also hosts today many migrant workers and asylum seekers from Eritrea who joined the local communities in the last 20 years. On the way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, we passed the Station of the Cross. This is the 9th station of the cross, dedicated to the 3rd time Jesus collapsed with the cross. Along the route, there are 14 stations, 5 of them inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and 9 along the way. And when pilgrims come here, they walk in the footsteps of Jesus to be reminded of his suffering in the last hours before his crucifixion. They carry a cross, maybe a big cross that all the group carry together, or a personal cross that every person carry his own cross and walk with Jesus, as it's written in the gospel. They walk from one station to the other and being reminded of how he was condemned by the soldiers, how he collapsed with the cross on his back, how Joseph of Arimathea helped him to carry the cross, how the daughters of Jerusalem talked to him and cried for him, and he said, "Don't cry for me, cry for yourself," where he met Veronica, who cleaned his face. So the pilgrim walk in the footsteps of Jesus, carrying their cross and being reminded and feel connected and sympathize with the suffering of Jesus, as they believe that he suffered for them and they want to be with him in his suffering, all the way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So the 9th station, the stations are marked with this metal plate and little sculpture that were placed just a few months before the corona started by a community from Verona in Italy who dedicated to the Via Dolorosa. So we're standing in front of the closed door of the Church of the Redeemer. This is the Lutheran church. It's closed because of the corona, like many other churches in the Holy Land. Actually, many of them were closed for a couple of months, and in the last few weeks they started to open. Although you could see there are very few tourists even in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, mainly locals, visitors. This is the closest the Protestant could get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Protestant churches, the different communities, have no rights in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That means that they can visit the church, although they cannot celebrate any service inside the church because of the status quo. They just came too late. And when the Protestants established their first bishop house here in Jerusalem, it was near Jaffa Gate. It was a collaboration of the Anglican and the Lutheran. When they came here, they hoped to work among the locals and maybe to convince some Jews and Muslims to convert to the different Protestant communities. But it was not very successful. Very few Muslims and Jews converted to Christianity. Even among the local Christians, it was very hard to convince them to convert to the Anglican Church or the Lutheran Church. So instead of trying to convert people to the different Protestant communities, the Protestants decided that they just want to do something to support the local communities. They opened hospitals and schools and orphanages and elderly houses for the benefit of all. When the Catholics saw that, they were worried that people would get services from the Protestants and would join the Protestant churches. So they opened schools and hospitals and orphanages and elderly houses. The Greek Orthodox were worried if people would go and get services from the Catholic and the Protestant, they would lose their community because people would get services from them and convert to the Catholic Church or to one of the Protestant communities. So what did they do? They opened schools and hospitals and orphanages and elderly houses. Then the Jews said, oh my God, if people would go and get services from these Christians, we would lose our community because people would convert. So what did they do? They picked up the phone, called Rothschild and said, we need a hospital here, urgently. And actually, thanks to the Protestant activity, back in the 19th century, all the services in the Holy Land were upgraded. Hospitals were opened, schools were opened, elderly people were taken care of, and orphanages were opened. The first Lutheran church separated from the Anglican common bishop was opened in 1898 here. On the 31st of October 1898, the emperor came from Germany to dedicate the church over here, and that's the place where the Lutheran community gathered to pray on Sunday. But there are 4 different services here. One in German, the property still belonged to the German Lutheran Church, German Evangelical Church. One in English, for visitors mainly. One in Danish, and the local community pray in Arabic. And this is very important to remember when we talk about the different denominations and the different communities in the Holy Land. It doesn't matter if it's a Catholic or Orthodox or Coptic or Syriac or Lutheran or Anglican or Baptist or Presbyterian. When we enter one of these local churches, the language that the people would talk would be Arabic. with all this different in theology, in church orientation, when we come to the culture, and when we come to the language, when we come to the identity, we're talking about Arab Christians. We're talking about Christians who live here, who speak Arabic, who pray in Arabic, and this is a very important part of their identity. And in the level of the grassroots, the communities, the families, for them it doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Orthodox or Coptic or Lutheran, as long as you're a Christian, Arab Christian, you're always welcome. So here we conclude our tour in the Christian Quarter. We met with some of the holy places, the different communities. We talked about identity, heritage, tradition, culture. It's just a glimpse of what the city has to offer. And I'm looking forward to see you next year in Jerusalem and explore together with you the little alleys and streets of the Christian Quarter in Jerusalem. לשנה הבאה בירושלים.